morning, everybody, and welcome to the White Label Resources Autumn Statement 24 review. I'm Martin Collins, and I'm absolutely delighted to have everybody join us. And thank you for giving us a bit of time to chat and talk about what hopefully you'll find quite interesting. We're going to delve quite deep into some stuff today, so we have got some questions, and please feel free to send questions through. But as always, I'm absolutely delighted to have two of my colleagues with me. For people who've joined us before, you'll recognise Alex Reynolds, Managing Partner of Butler Cook, and Mike Ball, Managing Partner of M Ball and Co. And really the guys bring together an awful lot of experience that's appropriate to us as business owners. So whether that be accountancy, tax, strategic planning, corporate finance, banking, mergers and acquisitions. Because as you'll be aware, one of the key drivers for me personally, and I think for all of us as business owners, is let's not get too caught up in the boring black ink on white paper. Let's look at this budget. There's been a lot of hype around it. How do we deal with this as an opportunity and understand the challenges that it may give us as business owners? So one of the first challenges I think we have is to try and make sure that this is not a political bias anyway throughout. And those of you who know me, and indeed my colleagues, will probably see the challenge there is there. However, we have come up with a bit of a precautionary approach, and that's whoever is the most political throughout this is buying dinner tonight. So again, because I'm relatively tight, I'm going to pretty much make sure I stick to the facts, and that's not me. Inevitably, as I've said that, I do want to point out one thing that I've found quite interesting since the budget is how many MPs, and to be fair, in particular, quite a lot of Labour MPs have, some of it's on the back foot because there's been a lot of negativity in the media and there's a lot of hype about it. But actually, the MPs have come out on media, social media and news saying, no, we need you to look at the detail here. You need to understand how these changes, the legislation, the pointers affect you as your individual business, the unique opportunities. And I think it was the farming minister, Daniel Zeitner, is it? He actually went as far to encourage people, seek professional advice, align your own unique circumstances with the legislation, because that's how you can utilise the rules and take advantage. So it's quite refreshing, to be fair, to hear the government saying, look, these are the rules. Get people to advise you, get that understanding in there. And when that's coming directly from policymakers, I think it underscores the kind of critical importance of tailored planning. And for me, using your advisors and ensuring that your advisors are knowledgeable, commercial, and really see it from running a business, how we can get some value out of it. And I think that's why we've got these experts here with us today. One thing, picking up on the individual and the tailored opportunities, is that we are offering 20 on a first come first serve basis, 20 30-minute free consultations on a one-to-one basis with my colleagues here, or indeed Paul, our head of legal services, to discuss the impacts of this, anything specific budgetary wise, from accountancy, tax, corporate finance, legal, whatever. So that's easy. Drop us an email to consultation@whitelabelresources.co.uk. Don't worry about jotting that down. I'll refer to that a bit later. And in fact, probably might be quite useful if you don't jot it down right now, because I forgot to tell our IT department to set that email address up, so they're rapidly doing it now. Okay, right. Enough about that. Let's jump on to, I think, one of the things that for me took a lot of news time in the run-up. It's been hanging around in previous government as well. Business asset disposal relief, formerly known as entrepreneurs relief, something that has so much positivity about it, but can create some problems with the negative press. Alex, over to you. Give us a bit of an update and overview where we're at with that.
Firstly, looking forward to dinner tonight.
I can't argue on that.
Well, certainly. So, business asset disposal relief offers capital gains tax rate at 10% for disposing of business assets. Which has been around for quite a while, and is going to be around until April 25. But after that, it's going to increase from 10% 14%, and then 18% by 2026.
Yeah.
And that's on your first £1 million of gain on a disposal, which is quite a large increase, 4% on £1 million each year. It, has a significant impact on how you plan your disposals of your business. We've had the 10% for quite a while now, so everyone's got used to it. So it's quite a shock to the system for people who are planning or to sell their business in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time. It might accelerate that those thought processes.
Okay, yeah, and was it was a bit naughty in the taxes, because I think everyone was focused on worst case scenario, changes will come in as of midnight on budget day. Not for wanting to be political on this, but there was a bit of a shift, and they caught a few people unawares by bringing it in on the morning of the budget as opposed to midnight.
Yeah, so it's not, some people may not have planned for that to happen, so they changed the actual base of the rate of capital gains tax. So that was caught people by surprise. Some commentators thought actually business asset disposal relief was actually going to be changed on that at midnight as well, and that didn't happen. So it kept us guessing. But when things change, it's opportunity for planning and changing strategies.
And I guess and I know, Mike, it's something you're really focused on. People being strategic and planning. One of the things, and we'll come on to CGT next, but one of the things that's clear is don't leave it till the last minute. Get on it, and I guess all of this lot has made even more of a focus on some of the strategic planning and exits.
I think, look, you'll hear me talk a lot about structure and group structures, and I like companies rather than partnerships and being taxed as individuals, just because the tax rates are low in the right circumstances. We talk a lot about group structures. If you've typically got a shareholding in a trading company and that's all you've got now, you're probably behind the curve. If we take a step back, it's nice to have all the opportunities and flexibility to deal with things like the budget. But the budget in isolation is an issue, but actually it's all the other things that you need to plan around. So, we look a lot at structures. We look a lot at those structures being as opportunistic within the tax regime as they can be. Involving all the families, involving parents when you set companies up. We briefly spoke about sort of agricultural sector. Typically, that will be a sector that's not taking significant advice. They're probably sort of third generational, still owned by first generation, asset rich, cash poor. All the opportunities are open to all those people to benefit from sort of structural tax planning. Yes, and if we get the right structure in place, then the budget did accelerate some people's thoughts on maybe partially exiting. But if you get the structure right in the first place, then
half the job's done. Well, and I think that's a really key point. And we'll talk about it a lot, about strategies and how we drive that forward. We have to rely on our commercial minds, because if I'm honest with you, not all of us can be as fortunate as Mr. Tufnell, the Labour MP, whose family had the amazing foresight to move vast amounts of their farming estates, I think 3 weeks before the budget, into other family members, saving them millions in tax. But I mean, that's more of a factual point than a political bias statement.
But a great precedent.
Absolutely. And it works lovely. And I think that brings us on to the general capital gains. So capital gains levied on the profit of the asset that we dispose of. Important for us always to remember, it's a tax on the profit, not on the total value. But it's got some changes, it's got some adjustments in it, and it's going to be phased over a period of time. What does that feel like? I guess just initially, Alex, maybe you can just guide us on this, just for clarity. What's the phase changes of capital gains outside of the business asset disposal relief we've just talked about?
So the lower rate of capital gains used to be 10%. Using your normal allowances, and that is now 18%. And the higher rate is now 24%. That's slightly different on residential properties, where it's 28% of the higher rate. So that's slightly changed, and that's what came in at what we were talking about earlier at midnight on the 30th, which got a few people unaware. Capital gains, just clarity, is obviously basically any asset that you make a profit on. that could be, also we spoke about business assets, but some capital gains can make as well. So,
and I guess because one of the things that we often talk about is how do we bring what is taken for granted in maybe some massive, large global corporates and in their planning and their strategies, how do we bring that down to us as business owners, SME owners? Because it's not a case of saying, well, that doesn't apply to me because they've got multiple pieces. Actually, we can still utilise this in planning and our strategies.
Well, look, the same, you hear me say a lot, the same rules apply. Tax rules, the tax rules, right? And whilst those capital taxes have gone up, they're still significantly lower than income tax rates.
Yeah.
Particularly when you start bringing in national insurance, which is another subject I'm sure we're going to get onto. So, if I'm running a business, what am I thinking about? I'm thinking about, do I take everything out and pay income tax, be it dividend rate or income tax rates? You need to consider corporation tax. Or do I start accumulating wealth in my capital asset, in my company? Do I look at accelerating maybe my exit from there, be it partially, if you've got children in the business, maybe selling the business to them, that the business can legitimately fund itself. It's always looking at the bigger picture and saying, of all the opportunities open to me, legitimately under the tax rules, what is the best route of travel?
And absolutely. And I think that really reiterates, and some of our colleagues in the Labour government are pushing it. So it's that theme again, individual circumstances. What does it mean for us? How do we understand it? And that's often taking a deep breath, isn't it? And just going, right, okay, here's where I'm at.
One of the big things is timing as well. Not necessarily, timing is commercial timing, tax as well, making sure so that always brings in, and taking a step back and looking at the tax position, commercial position, and bringing it all into one pot.
No, fair point. So naturally, I think you've just touched on it, the big E, the national insurance contributions, the rise, a lot has been made of it. 26 billion or whatever it is it's generating. 13.8 up to 15%. Is that big an issue?
Yes. You look at some of the headlines at the moment around certain sectors, a massive impact, sectors where there's quite high intensity of numbers of staff. So let's just use retail and pubs and things like that. It's going to hit them quite hard. So the increase, roughly for a company who's got 5 employees, the headline increase, along with the national minimum wage increase as well, we've got to take that into account because that's also coming off the bottom line, can be up to £10,000 increase in cost for 5 employees. For 10 employees, it's 20. I'm using rough figures here. 25, 50. Now there's some stuff around the increase in the employer's allowance, but again, that's individual to each company. They might have different structures, so you might not be. So I'm just using the headline figures here. So for 5 employees, £10,000 increase. For 10, 20, so it's we're talking big numbers here. And the thing that people haven't spoken about is for the smaller companies is the impact on pension auto enrolment, where people get caught out on with the increase in the minimum wage. So and it's easy to get caught out by that. All of a sudden, somebody who doesn't qualify qualify. You've got the pension regulator to deal with. So again.
So it's about,
it's not just tax, it's the whole
piece that goes around it. So getting an understanding of it, getting your numbers right for your planning. And because at some point you've got to either reduce that or plan for it, in whether that's through your budgeting, your price changes, your whatever it may be. So it is a bit of a challenging one. I think, Mike, we were talking the other day about. There's this big thing about VAT on school fees, which is a problem for many people. But it's interesting.
We talked about it when we were paying school.
Exactly.
2 weeks ago.
That's it. We're having a good old moan and whinge about it. And it's a double whammy for private schools because they've got this VAT position that's going to potentially drive down revenues, but they've got they've got huge amounts of staff. In NIC, so the NIC increase is a problem. So the whole VAT on school fees is actually a problem for both parents, but also the schools.
Well, we act for a number of private schools. We are aware of sort of private schools' positions from our own personal relationships with them. and yes, you know, when you think about it, you do feel a little bit sorry for them because they have taken a double whammy. You know, it's affected their market because they've become, you know, 20% more expensive overnight. And you know, if you think about it, a lot of those entities will be paying high salaries, on average. And if you know, if that's £1,000, if you're on 50k and you've got 500 staff at that, then they've got an issue. But certainly, you know, looking at the other side of that coin is the people paying the fees. And you know, we've spoken a lot about, you know, cash extraction from companies and earnings, and you know, these things we shouldn't be sort of scared about talking about and planning for from a tax point of view. And I think, you know, people will be looking at a lot more opportunities. We know a lot of grandparents that pay school fees. And structuring things that may mean that you know, that help can be structured better.
And it's interesting, that goes back to that point about individual opportunities, doesn't it? Because we've seen, and quite rightly so, there's been some people who have been out there marketing their education, trust planning, and fees and what have you, and have quite rightly been hung out and highlighted, because that's absolutely not the way forward. And that for me is about people who are kind of trying to make legislation fit what they're trying to do, as opposed to going, well, there's some good old school traditional planning that we should be considering again on our individual positions that give us that.
Well, back in the day, there was this sort of private school fee planning schemes and that sort of thing, which you know, you don't need to go near to enable you to use the tax rules in an appropriate way, in a way that sort of does you a favour or two. You know, part of those structures incorporated completely vanilla opportunities that involved income for grandchildren from grandparents settling in assets into trust and that sort of thing. You know, absolutely nothing wrong with that, as long as you do that in the right way. So you know, again, incorporate all of that into the group structures when you're setting companies up. And again, those things covered off quite easily.
Cool. I know we've got some people joined us today from the farming and agricultural sector, so it would be remiss not to at least touch on the agricultural inheritance piece. I know my old mate Mr. Clarkson has been quite vocal on it, and he's turned his attention to banging the drum about it. But it's quite a significant piece, I guess. Alex, you know, whilst there's a lot of noise around there, and yet again we're talking about understanding not so much what the budget has done, but your personal situations to apply to it. What do we need to know?
Yeah, you're right, Mark. It's because it's an individual thing, because the farms, you know, one farm is so different to another and how everything's structured. But you know, the headline figures are the fact that, you know, you no longer get that agricultural property relief, which is effectively, doesn't form part of your estate for inheritance tax. Now, farmers obviously rightly upset about that. Because obviously, Mike mentioned earlier, you know, a lot of farms, a lot of clients that we have and had, you know, yes, they've got farms, but normally they're asset rich, cash. Or running a farm is a blooming hard thing to do. And keep afloat and pay the wages. So, you know, historically, it doesn't form part of your estate for inheritance tax. So the changes have gone forward now is you now have £1 million. It's not doesn't form part of your estate for inheritance tax, and then after that, 50%. Forms part of your estate, which is then taxed at 20% inheritance tax. Now, nearly got political then, so my wallet started getting a little bit worried. But you know, again, we'll talk about structure. There's different structures within the farms, how that potentially could be moved. You know, if you got foresight of what was going to happen in the budget, you may have moved assets around previously. You know, now you are also caught if after 30th of October 24, if you start moving assets around, they form part of your 7-year ticking clock for what would then still form part of your estate. But you know, start getting into technical bits. But you know, again, each individual farm, each individual taxpayer is different. It's different potential strategy to try and mitigate any taxes. And obviously, like I say, if you listen to Labour MPs, start having those conversations now, because the inheritance tax piece takes a long time for us to start from to finish to mitigate those.
So I find interesting. It's a sector that typically the advice that they're always talking about is the bit that kicks in when they die.
Yeah,
right. But also some of these are very well run businesses that earn a lot of money, but because the sort of land value at death completely outweighs the other bits and pieces of the trade, it's something that I've always worried about. I'm actually quite excited, farmers, because I think it will prompt them to take the advice that I think they should have been taking historically and go, well, there's not actually any reason for us to keep this in a partnership structure anymore. And we can look at incorporating, we look at the reliefs of doing so. We can look at the tax advantages that being in a corporate structure bring. We can look, typically there'll be family involved. So we can look at increasing the flexibility and opportunity in terms of moving those assets around, the assets in the corporate structure being shared. And all the advantages that may bring. So we can concentrate on the bit that goes, you pay a bit more tax when you're dead, but actually, well before we get there, there might be way more opportunity.
I think because there's been 0% in the past, no one's doing anything about it because you don't need to. All of a sudden brings it into the spotlight. So actually,
so actually that's going to, and we're talking about farming in this piece, but actually this is for all of us from an inheritance tax point of view. Well, actually, there's a lot we can do, and why wait till it starts raining to fix the hole in the roof? Let's get it done. Let's get it out of the way. Let's structure it now.
And to look at an example, we've got a few on the books, obviously, but we've been looking at a couple recently where they might be making profit of £1 million a year. Well, as an individual, they're losing half of that. Right, automatically, no matter what they spend that money on, they're paying half of that to the revenue. Okay, under a corporate structure, they'll be paying a quarter of that to the revenue. Typically, they won't need all of that money out. So in terms of what they're doing elsewhere in their businesses or in their lives, you keep that in a corporate structure, you just halve your income tax bill. That over 10, 20 years will far outweigh the worry on inheritance tax. And also the structure may allow you to mitigate that tax before you get there. Which is way more fun than being dead.
True, can't argue with that. And also, you can also, with the gift, back on your point about gifting, Alex, and the 7-year period, you can get that underway now, no matter what age you are, because you can also buy insurance policies that will slide down the scale to protect you if something untoward happens to you in the 7-year period for the inheritance piece, which is I'm going to plug. I think it's something we've done in our insurance piece. But again, it's that getting the front foot out there, getting ahead of it, and thinking it through. And
people get worried as well. Oh, I'm in the 70s. Oh, there's no point doing any planning now. I'm too old. But if you something along the lines of doing that, all of a sudden, it makes.
So there's some fairly fundamental changes that are going to catch people as a result of inheritance tax planning, the agricultural piece in farming or what have you, on the back of the budget. But what we're saying is actually this is just really needs to focus us to do what we're trying to encourage people to do anyway, which is proactively moving forward, thinking about this. And again, I guess it's that piece for me. Well, what's your individual circumstances? There's not a one size fits all to anything in life. Let's understand what that is.
Get a blank piece of paper, draw it up and see what opportunities are out
there. All right, boring. Company cars. So we've got to talk about it because there's a few changes. A double U-turn for the double cab pickups. What's the kind of just useful for everyone just to kind of
you say boring, but it's probably one of the most popular questions that we get asked. Investment properties and company cars and electric cars. That's literally, I've said that's 70% of the questions that we clients ask us. So on the double cab pickups, quite rightly you point out that it's a double U-turn. So double cab pickups from April 25 will be classed as cars going forward. So if you've got a double cab pickup in your business that you use personally, that'll be then classed as a car, so that'll be relevant.
Is that for existing ones? So this is only for new ones.
So this is where we come in again. So that's vehicles purchased after that day.
Okay.
There's some transition rules for cabs that you already, double cab pickups you've got in your business already. But by 2029, if you've still got those vehicles, they'll be classed as cars.
Right.
So plenty of time to
try and come up with something. But again, makes it difficult to have a sensible
and
plan for that sort of
if
thing.
you've got a double cab pickup in your business, more often than not, you're really using it for business.
Yeah, yeah.
So it is a little bit of a
Yeah.
Difficult one. So what's happening now is a lot of people, quite rightly, going out there looking at double cab pickups, buying them before April. To try and make sure we get them in the business before they
I was talking
change.
to the guys in the finance arm, and they were saying there's been a significant request for funding and asset finance in and around double cab because I guess because it works if you've got to have it ordered. You haven't actually got to get it on the road before the 5th of April, haven't you?
Yes, that's correct.
There you go. Look at that. Seamlessly.
He's 10 double cab pickups.
I did write it down. To be fair. And what about EVs?
I looked quite right in a double cab pickup.
Yeah, absolutely. Electric vehicles.
Electric vehicles. So electric vehicles, the actual benefit in kind, which is now at 2%, which was put into legislation a few years back, hasn't changed. So that's step up. So up until I think it's 5% in 20. I did write it down, but I can't say. But it goes. Yeah. So that hasn't changed. So that step up hasn't changed. What has slightly changed is new cars in the next tax year will be you have to pay your vehicle tax duty on it.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And then going forward as well, there's some changes to your road tax.
Yeah. Okay.
So effectively, your tax saving of having an electric car is slightly diminishing.
Yeah.
It's still probably a little bit more tax
beneficial,
but it's starting to come down a little bit.
But also remember that cars are taxed differently in, let's say, partnerships.
Yeah.
Right. So partnerships are vastly different in terms of the relief you get on a company car. Typically, we would have clients that have a number of facets to their business. Right, they don't all need to be run through a corporate. So again,
looking at how you're set up,
structure. If your particular one is a nice, efficient car that's in a business and be relatively tax efficient. You can look at this. And then great. If you want to be driving around a F12 Berlinetta or something shiny and red on a daily basis, then there might be a different way to take about it.
And so that, in case anybody out there hasn't quite grasped the theme that I think we're all seeing here, individual situation, discussions, structure. And this comes to strategy constantly. And what we are able to do when we, because dearest Rachel has confirmed that there won't be any further tax hikes, whether you believe that or not, I wouldn't make a comment because that would be political bias. There's a theory that there isn't going to be, but even if there was, the strategies we're talking about now, everything's movable, it's flexible, it's about looking at what works for your business now, and actually some of them are fundamental commercial strategies that you can then use legislation accordingly.
It's about being dynamic, right?
Yeah.
And it's the corporate vitamin
that
you take just in case rather than dealing with what's happened. So
back to that thing, one of the challenges I always put out, as you know, to accounts in particular is, are we looking in the rearview mirror or are we looking forward? And the big thing here is looking forward, isn't it?
Yeah, correct.
The looking forward piece brings us nicely into one of the things I know there's interesting questions that I've had about employee owned trust, the EOTs, ownership trust. It's it feels like that's become quite a buzzword recently. I think I can't remember what's the name of that company.
The richest sounds.
There was a big thing about them and about it. And I've also felt that perhaps some advisors ping it around as oh yeah, you should look at an EOT and what have you. But it's not a one size fits all as we've talked about. There's a couple of tweaks and changes in there in the budget.
Those tweaks being one, I might need to refer to my notes in a minute. One is that I'm using independent valuation. I mean, let's go back to step. What is the fear? I would imagine the fear from the government, from HMRC, is that these things are engineered to effect an exit of an owner without actually the owner exiting. So the tweaks are around managing that situation. So independent valuation. I'm looking at the wrong piece of my notes. Where is it? Independent valuation. Help me out, Alex, if you got it.
All right.
Gone off order.
Well, I think a big part of it for me was about the founder not being in that control. That's a big thing.
Restrictions. Yeah, restriction on owners' control.
Yeah.
Independent valuation, and prohibition of offshore trusts.
Yeah.
So all those bits of regs are to do with making sure that if you're selling it to the employees, you're selling it to the employees.
Yeah.
I think that's the key, isn't it? It's not engineering that.
And having worked some significant businesses now and historically, how many EOTs have we put in place? None.
Yeah.
Because typically there's that risk.
Yeah.
And typically, there are, if you've structured everything right, you don't need to be looking for an exit over there when when there's a whole,
when there's all this here.
Exactly right.
And again, interestingly enough, that comes back down to structure and individual position. And I do think, as a business owner now historically, and my commercial background is, you can't have a one size fits all. Sometimes some advisors, and our dear friend the farming minister is very committed. We should be speaking as business owners, be speaking to our advisors, utilise that, and we absolutely should.
Yeah.
But we should still challenge the advice we get, and we should ask the questions, because sometimes people hang on a one size fits all, and that we should be doing this, and it's not always appropriate. Okay, well, look, you'll be delighted to know we're coming through our general conversational questions and points. We've had a few questions in since we've been on this, and a few online, so we will probably do a small note to out to people to answer some questions. Interestingly, just wrapping this up, someone's raised a question: is R&D, research and development, tax relief no longer available? Because it was a big buzz thing for a few years, and then and there was all those challenges, and there was an awful lot of misuse and what have you.
Yeah.
But clearly, someone's thinking, well, it's a shame really, because that's quite good.
Yeah, but no, it's still available.
Okay.
There's no change to the legislation. It's just how HMRC interpreted it, and they do have a much larger team to then basically scrutinise the submissions. You quite rightly say it was misused.
Yeah.
But yes, R&D is still there. If you do qualify, you can still take advantage of that relief, which is brilliant relief. But again, it just takes a little bit more time to bring those reports together. A lot more time in.
They want more information now, don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
And let's not go into too much detail about the ability of their advisors sometimes, but ultimately,
it's a fair point.
Ultimately, they need a lot more information, which our team do, and HMRC do scrutinise it, but it is still available. And I would recommend, if people do have questions, give us a shout, because it is a brilliant thing to do, because it just take a lot out of your corporation tax.
Yeah, which Tracy will be delighted to, as the director of our R&D business. She'll be delighted to know that she's still able to do something. She's still got a job. This one, I guess, maybe a little bit of structure. So, is making tax digital for income tax self-assessment going to be a problem? I have 3 buy-to-let properties in my name personally.
Well, MTD is going to be a problem for everybody.
It's coming.
Yeah, it's coming. It's a problem for government because they can't deliver it, but that's a separate conversation.
You've just fallen into the trap. I reckon that's because I've not said anything.
Your wallet's coming out.
But ultimately, it's going to be an issue for everybody. So if someone's got 3 buy-to-let properties, again, we'll talk about structure. Say, well, should it be a problem for you going forward if we've got it in the right structure? So. Yes.
Structure on that. Would I want to own 3 or 4 or more resi properties that I'm renting out? Personally, probably not. Get no tax relief on mortgage interest, etc., etc. I'd probably be making sure that they're in a limited liability partnership at least. And ultimately corporate structure. There's exemptions and reliefs from stamp and that sort of thing. Incorporating LLPs into corporate structures. So get that right. There's opportunities there.
Perfect. And again, unique position, planning for it. Well, look, there you have it. There's our review to the autumn statement. Hopefully everyone's found it useful. There's quite a lot in there in terms of all the changes, but there's a clear theme that we wanted to bring across. A couple of points just to round up. Consultation at whitelabelresources.co.uk. We will send that out on a note. drop us an email, and on a first come first served basis, 30-minute free consultation, whether that's with Mike, Alex, Paul, accountancy, tax, finance, banking, legals, that you feel from the budget has raised some questions with you. Be delighted to have an opportunity on a one-to-one to talk about your unique situation. It would also be useful for me just to let everybody know we're just releasing our podcast, Entrepreneurs Exchange. We've done a couple. First one involved, I think, too much wine, so we're finding a balance between relaxing. But we'd be really interested to hear from you for any questions, any content you'd like to see, maybe any workshops, any interviews. We're going to be very keen to get that moving next year, and get ourselves going. So look, thank you for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you found it useful to hear from us. And literally all that's left is once more wish you a very happy day, and to work out where Alex is taking us for dinner this evening, because he definitely, absolutely definitely.
100%.
To be honest, I thought he was going to say Merry Christmas to everybody.
Yeah, no, we got to do that. That one will be later. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for your time. Cheers.